I have to tell you a short story. So my sisters and I went out thrifting. It was our citywide garage sales. We stopped at a bunch of flower places and looked at gardens, what we all like to do. But then we went thrifting because my sister lives in a different state. And so when she comes home, we like to spend time together. There are 5 of us, but only 4 were able to get together. And at our last garage sale, that's when my back started to hurt. And we got to our last garage sale and I was done. Like, had it. Couldn't take it anymore. And my sister seen this print in the garage sale, and I was telling them how I spookified a print, an old print, and they seen it on my channel. So we talked about that for a little bit. And she's seen this one and she's like, oh my gosh, Connie, you need to do this one for me. She's a quilter. She loves to quilt. And she has a sewing room. And so she said, I am going to put this in my sewing room, in my quilting room, and you have to do it for me. So I said, no, I'm done. I did 2, I'm done. And she's like, no, please, please. And then the other sisters got on her side and come on, you could do this and you could make this old wagon into a hearse. And I'm like, I can do what? Like, what do you think? How good do you think I am? But so then they said, you can do it. And guess what? I couldn't let them win. So fine. It was, I don't remember if it was $5 or $3. It was cheap. So my sister bought it, gave it to me, and now I spookified it. So I'm going to show you in this video how I painted this old print to be something different that she can hang in her sewing room. I hope you'll follow along.
Here is the painting my sister picked up. She loved that quilt hanging on the clothesline, which was what attracted her to this one. And they thought I could turn that buggy into a hearse, an old vintage hearse. They have high expectations for me, but we'll see what happens. I didn't start recording when I did my first witch, and then I thought, this needs to be recorded. So here I am just painting some fall colors into some of the flowers in the front and just getting those yellows and oranges in the front so that it would turn more into a fall fence line in the front. Then the same thing for the trees. And I tried to leave some of the stems. What you want to do is you want to leave some of the original painting or print that's behind it, which is what gives it the character of being a thrift ghost makeover. And here we are with the buggy into a hearse. So the first thing I had to do was cover it up and then give it a fun little top. I looked up the vintage hearse on Pinterest and got some ideas, and they had like curtains that the bodies would go into the old-fashioned wagons. So I just gave it a gray kind of curtain look and then added a little farm fresh to it and had the curtains like open in the back, and I needed a little bit of a contrast, but it did kind of turn out pretty cool. It wasn't that difficult after all. Then I went ahead and did this man, and he was a Amish man, which is, we're from Amish country, so they are very familiar to us. And I just gave him a black suit like he's the undertaker of this whole vintage print now, and put a little lantern on it. Then this fence along the back, it was sticking out kind of white, so I wanted to cover it up a little bit and make it blend in. I made this witch, this lady, she turned into a witch. It's actually pretty easy to turn these little characters into witches and ghosts because the frame is already there for you. My older sister, she said, I can't even paint by number. And I said, well, actually, this is kind of like painting by number because it's all there for you. It's all waiting and ready. I wanted to put some little rats on the barn, and my husband said, rats don't have curly tails like that. So I did have to wipe those tails off and make them flat, but I thought they would look kind of cute with the curly tails, but he said that's not what a rat looks like. So here's where we're at right now. And it all looks really good, but I have some more work to do. So inside this window, I wanted to put a pumpkin up there in the top of the haymow. And so I just was putting pumpkins randomly throughout, using Summer Crush and then a little Queen Bee to lighten them up, and then actually adding a little bit of white to make them pop out a little bit more, giving them some stems with weathered wood and giving them a little bit of an outline. They turned into really cute pumpkins, and you have to make sure that you keep them to size. Like, you don't want them to be too big or too small, and so they got to fit the actual size of it. So here's one thing that I didn't fit quite right. This ghost was awfully big in that doorway. So with this print, it was kind of a glossy surface, so I could take a baby wipe and wipe off what didn't go the way I wanted it to. So you'll see me later um, wiping that ghost off because he was just a little bit too big. I wanted to add a little bit of fall colors to the front of this and not have that purple look to it. The purple look is because this print is very, very old and very faded. So it has that purple hue to it, like the UVs really just ate the colors of this print away. And here we are right now. This is, you can see the rats, their tails are now laying down. Um, Everything is looking pretty good, but I still don't think I'm done yet. This is a process. I thought that the colors over here on this right side were a little bit bright, so I dulled it down with a little um, darkened yellow. I darkened down some of that whitish look. I wanted them to be more moody. So I did that and added a little bit of hay underneath the pumpkins, and that actually grounded the pumpkins a little bit more when I added those little bit of hay. So here I'm going to wipe off this pumpkin, or this, not the pumpkin, the ghost. And it didn't wipe off completely, so I went ahead and tried to put the ghost back in again. Still wasn't looking quite right. The ghost head was a little on the small side, so you're going to see me just paint over the whole thing. If it all else fails, just add paint. So I painted over the entire ghost again, one more time. Let's just let that dry a little bit, and then we're going to go back in. And this ghost is more to size of the door area there. He's not quite towering to the top of the door. I put one of my little famous spiders hanging off the haymow door. And then here's the best part. She wanted this quilt to have some fall colors added to it. So I'm not a quilter, so I have no idea where these patterns and colors are supposed to be. So I just did my best and added a little bit of fall colors, the greens, the orange, the yellows, the browns, added them all to the quilt, and then I outlined it in a little black dress with just a little bit of a liner brush just to bring out that shape of that quilt a little bit. It actually kind of looks puffy, doesn't it? Then I put a tombstone and a couple crosses in this front yard. Like, that's what the intent is. This is to spookify it up. So I went and added a few bats flying in the sky. I always add bats in odd numbers, and so I was going to put 3, and then I added a little one, so then that was 4, and then it was 5, and then it was 6, and so then I had to add the 7th one. So it did end up being a lot of bats. Then my other sister, she said, the only thing I've ever painted is a barn quilt. So I'm like, oh, this barn needs a barn quilt. So I went ahead and added a barn quilt. I took a little piece of paper and I stuck it on the print to find out what the size was, and then I made the barn quilt that size. And it's not perfect, but this is not a perfect painting. So it's just I think that's the Texas Star barn quilt, and added the orange and the yellows and darker colors to that. The little corners were still white, and they were just too white for me, too stark, too much of a contrast. So I dulled those down with a little bit of gray. So after I was done with the barn quilt, we needed a little bit something to draw your eye towards that quilt hanging on the line. So I added a little crow, And then I also added a spider. He's hanging down there by the quilt in the spider web. And that kind of spookified that area a little bit too, right in the front. Now this hearse needed a little bit of defining where that they were curtains out there. So I added some curtains. You're going to notice that there's a little can sitting by the undertaker's foot. And I didn't know what to do with that. And at the end, my husband said, "Why don't you make that into a lantern?" So you see it just magically appear into a lantern. And then it was time to take care of the outside. I wanted a little bit darker gray. This gray that was there was just a little bit on the faded side. And so I went with letterpress gray in the DIY paint and added 2 coats of the letterpress gray. So you can see that it's a bit on the darker side than what it was. The 2 lines, matting lines on the inside, I left them as is in that lighter gray color. And this is actually making the painting just pop so much more, adding this darker layer. You can see that it dries lighter, but we're going to seal this up in the end. Now the frame, I used Little Black Dress, and then I also used the DIY paintbrush. And these paintbrushes, if you don't have one of these, just hop on over to my website and grab one. They are the best paintbrushes, and they make the job so darn easy. I only did 1 coat of Little Black Dress on this frame, and the paintbrush was amazing. And you can check them out on my website, and there's 5 different kinds, and they all have a different purpose. Now, here I'm going to seal up this matting with wax. Yep, you heard me. I'm putting wax over top of paper, and then I'm waxing the entire print also to give it a nice protect, and then to also add some colors back into those DIY paints, because when the DIY paints dry, they turn into kind of a chalky look, and they don't have as much color anymore. Now, when you put wax on, some people get really nervous because you can see that where I put wax on, it's not the same color. It's all different shades of color, and they call that the freak out factor. Don't have the freak out factor. You can just go ahead and let that dry, and it's all going to dry in the same color. I waxed right over top of the painting, which brought out the colors a lot. And this had been drying for like a day, so you want to make sure that your paints are dry when you do this, otherwise you will smear them. Now I took my black frame and I distressed it with a baby wipe. I wanted that rustic look to it, so I went ahead and just distressed. I do like the look of the brown stain and the black together. Now when I go into waxing this, I'm going to start right out with dark wax. I did not clear wax this frame because when I use black, I do like to just go right in with the dark wax because it just gives it that much of a richer look. So this frame is just getting dark wax, and that brown stain that's coming through is just beautiful with that Little Black Dress. So the dark wax works perfect. I love the DIY wax. If you haven't had a chance to try the DIY wax, you really should, because it's a great product. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and just hang on to the end so you can see the final result.
Hey, it's Connie from The Painted Photographer. You guys are not going to believe this house. We are having new siding and new windows and new doors put in, and it's a mess. There is stuff everywhere. So, hence all my decor is on top of this breakfast bar. It is what it is, right? Anyway, what did you think? Wasn't that fun? I think it turned out so good. I really, really like it. And it's all done with DIY paint. And then I used wax to seal it because it kind of had a dull, the chalk paint kind of has a dull, chalky look to it. And I wanted it to be bright and fun. So I added wax to it and it was the cherry on the top. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like any DIY paint or other products, head on over to the Painted Photographer at thepaintedphotographer.com and I'll ship it right to your front door. If you're local, I do sell my DIY paint and IOD products at Foreman's Farm Home in Medford, Wisconsin. And until next time, happy painting.